John Lewis's spirit, I was reminded of a verse that says the race is not given to the swift nor to the strong, but to the one that endures. To the one that endures. To the one that endures. And you know what he said? It's our time to take the baton. The baton is ours.
You think about folks like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., you think about Representative John Lewis, those who in the past spoke so eloquently and passionately, those who espouse what we are espousing here today. I want you to know that even when those who have gone on to glory, who stood up for what is right and just, they pass it on to our generation to stand up for what is right and just. How many folk here today are here to declare that they will never back down, that they will never give in, and they will never give up?
We are different than this. We are different than what we see on the news. And we need to pass the For the People Act so that every voice here has a voice in our democracy. Everyone who can go to the polls, gets a ride, can get to the polls, whether here in Wilmington, Delaware, whether in Texas or Georgia or anywhere across this country.
History will judge us by what we did at this moment to protect our voting rights and democracy.
We're facing unprecedented voter suppression laws across this country right now. Our voting rights are in peril at this very moment. And we must stand here as constituents of Delaware and stand with the people across this country to demand our voices are heard, that our elected officials work to ensure that they are working to pass the For the People Act, and that if we don't fight back, more and more Americans will become disenfranchised and lose their right and their voice in our democracy.
We find ourselves confronting a lie as big as they come, and we find ourselves confronting those who want to try to sell us suppression cloaked in security. Most secure election ever. So, as we come together to honor John, our commitment is not just to talk the talk, but to walk the walk, to walk together. It is our time to get in necessary good trouble. Necessary good trouble. I'm talking about this kind of good trouble, where we come together as citizens on this day and say we are unified, that we must pass H.R. 1. We are unified that we must have an H.R. 4 and pass H.R. 4 because voting rights are on the table. And we will not let progress be stopped by process. I'm going to say that again in a little way. Process cannot and will not stop progress.
Senator McConnell has stated in no uncertain terms that the filibuster would be used to defeat any progressive legislation on the Biden agenda. This is anti-democratic and autocratic. It allows the minority party to defeat the proposals of the majority party without discussion, debate, or even the opportunity for amendment. The filibuster should be reformed or eliminated because no party, neither Republican nor Democrat, should be the party that has the power to prevent legislation introduced by the majority party from even being voted on. Biden called the right to vote in America the test of our time. Addressing the big lie of election fraud that supports new voter suppression in, we now know, 48 states, he asked, are you on the side of truth or lies, fact or fiction, justice or injustice, democracy or autocracy?
I want you to know, my sisters and brothers, that our whole society will falter if we continue to allow repressive and oppressive-minded politicians to use people as political pawns by playing on the fear of underrepresented communities. There are many in the halls of Congress this day who are pushing for oppression and repression. They would love to see us roll back the clock to the 1950s. They would love to see black and brown people under the yoke of white supremacy. I'm here to declare that these things are evil to the core. I call upon the consciousness and the courage of people of every ethnic group, every religious group, to stand up for what is right and just, to resist the demonic and power-hungry game that puts our very nation at peril and that threatens innocent souls everywhere with a hell right here on earth.
We're here to talk about the right to vote. I think at some level, what we're talking about is the most fundamental justices in our country, in our community. It's about saying that everyone, no matter what your history in this land, you deserve an equal say in the annals of power of our country, of our state, our county, and our city.
I stand here on this day to affirm the right to vote for all citizens as a basic human right.
Democrats have the power to stop a wave of voter suppression laws sweeping this country. And that starts by passing the For the People's Act, which will guarantee access to early and absentee voting, end partisan gerrymandering, and limit the influence of money in politics. And I truly believe now is that time.
I want you to spread the word. If there were just two people out here, I know they would be the right two people. But we got you out here, and we got the cameras out here, and we're going to spread the word. Because if people don't get how urgent this moment is, we want them to know. We want them to know that this right is tied to criminal justice reform. This right is tied to health care. This right is tied to a minimum wage increase across this country. This right is tied to child care. This right is tied to our very existence, the ability for us to drink the water and breathe the air and even have a planet to live on. This right is the right to vote, and we need to keep the right to vote. Democracy is our calling, and good trouble is the way.
At one point in time, I was a toddler in my mom's arms as she first stepped off the airplane into New York soil. My parents' lungs filled with the American air, while their heads filled with lavish dreams about the lives that my unborn sister and I would live. Just 2 years ago, freshman year, my parents finally applied to be citizens. I watched as my parents studied hard to pass the citizenship test and celebrated in joy when they discovered that they were permanent residents of the United States of America, the land of the free. Those 12 years that we lived in this country without being able to vote tell me just how important voting really was, how suffocating it feels to know that your opinion does not matter, how distressing it is to live for so long in a place where your voice is not represented. But at that time, my parents were not citizens and they could not vote. But how about all of the people who are citizens and still aren't able to vote, who are refused the chance to vote because of unnecessarily strict voter ID requirements, who are unable to cast their ballot because their state has restricted alternatives to physical voting? What about all of these people who are turned away, most of whom are from minority Black and brown communities? Does their voice not matter? Do they not get the satisfaction of knowing that they are represented in America, the land of opportunity? How is this the land of opportunity if its own citizens are not given the opportunity to vote?
This is not what we want our country to be. It takes voice, it takes energy, and it takes action.
Historically, the filibuster has been used to block civil rights legislation and protect the interests of the minority over the will of the majority. If the filibuster remains in place, Republicans will be free to dismantle voting rights across this nation and flip the House by drawing their own congressional districts. To put it simply, Senate Democrats will soon be faced with a choice. Save our democracy or save the filibuster.
Protecting the freedom of the American people, all of us, is much more important than preserving a Senate rule. We ask you, Senators Carver and Coons, to take the lead in moving the Senate beyond obstructionism by working with your colleagues to fix the filibuster so that it cannot be the barrier that it is now. It must be modified so that we can pass the For the People Act to ensure that the United States is the democracy it claims to be, and to prevent a minority from turning in this country into an autocracy.
We are calling for a vision of a beloved community founded on economic and racial justice. We're calling for a vision that includes reinstating and strengthening voting rights protection in light of this continued systemic racism that threatens and undermines the provisions for fair and free elections for all citizens.
If you believe that creating automatic voter registration that requires people to opt out instead of opt in, let me hear some noise. If you believe every station has an online portal for voter registration, let me hear some noise. If you believe every state should have open early voting that has 15 days of early voting and sites open for at least 10 hours, let me hear some noise. If you believe no state should have restrictive access to voting by mail or require certain conditions to meet qualified to vote by mail, let me hear some noise. If you believe restoring voting rights to convicted felons who have served their sentence, let me hear some noise. If you believe it is time to end the Jim Crow filibuster and pass the For the People Act, the John Lewis Voter Advancement Act, and D.C. statewide, let me hear some noise. If it is time for some necessary trouble, some good trouble, in order to get this done, we will stand with me because it's a revolutionary summer. Our democracy is on the line. Let me hear some noise if you're willing to fight for it.
So therefore I declare, along with all of you freedom fighters and those who dare to practice this thing that we call justice, in order to expand voting rights, in order to change campaign finance laws, in order to reduce the influence of money in politics, in order to ban partisan gerrymandering, and in order to create new ethic rules for federal office holders, we demand the passage of For the People Act, and we demand it right now.
We must work harder. We must never give up. We must never give in. And we must keep our eyes on the prize. The prize is democracy. The prize is the beloved community. Now get in some good trouble.
Know that we shall win. We shall overcome. We know and we are confident that we will win because good always wins over evil. So let's get it done. Let's pass the For the People Act. Let's get it done now, not later. Now is the time.